This presentation will provide the necessary information to understand the hazards of silica exposure, how to identify silica exposure, and controls that can be put in place to protect against silica exposure. Silica is one of the most common substances on Earth. It can be found in many materials found on our construction sites. Silica is in sand, concrete, gypsum products, countertops, cement boards, tile, rock, granite, and many other materials. Anyone who cuts, grinds, saws, drills, chisels, sands, or demolishes these materials may have the potential to expose workers and themselves to hazardous silica-containing dust. Silicosis is a lung disease caused by breathing in the small particles of silica dust. It is not a reversible condition, and there are no specific treatments. Due to these risks, OSHA has issued a new silica standard. The new OSHA silica standard lowers the permissible exposure limit, or PEL, to 50 micrograms per cubic meter over an 8-hour day. This is 1/5 of the previous PEL of 250 micrograms per cubic meter. Companies have 3 ways to comply with the new standard. The preferred method is using Table 1 that was created by OSHA to assist companies with understanding what the control requirements are for certain activities listed in the table. The second way to comply is to use objective data provided by manufacturers of tools and materials like Hilti, DeWalt, and USG, or other third-party groups, showing that employees' exposure would be below the PEL. The last way to comply would be to conduct personal air sampling of employees during the activities they perform and use that data to select the appropriate controls needed if the exposure exceeds the PEL. The standard calls for the development of a silica exposure plan. This will be available to you on the job sites in a paper and digital format. Your job leader is designated as your key competent person for the job site. If you are required to wear a respirator for more than 30 days per year to protect yourself from silica dust, you will be required to have a baseline medical exam. You may have this performed at no cost to you, and you will be paid for your time to complete the exam. Please contact Human Resources for this. This presentation informs you of important aspects of silica exposure and dust control. Additional information is available from the safety director and your job leader. Housekeeping practices must be used to prevent additional dust exposure. The use of dry sweeping or sweeping with compressed air is now prohibited. To clean, you must use a HEPA vacuum, wet sweeping, or an approved sweeping compound with a dust respirator. The new rule requires the following contents to be in an exposure control plan. List of all tasks involving exposure to silica, a description of how silica dust will be controlled, housekeeping measures that will be taken to reduce dust, how the employee will restrict access to only trained employees, thus protecting other workers or the general public. Employees must be trained in general awareness and controls to be used to protect them from silica exposure. A competent person must be on site while activities are being performed which generate silica dust and understand what his or her responsibilities are under the standard. The Bauma exposure control plans will be distributed to the job sites with this information. Table 1 was prepared by OSHA to give companies an easy way to comply with the new standard. Table 1 provides a list of equipment and tasks where exposure to respirable silica is known. It also shows that engineering controls can be used to reduce the exposure and prescribes when a respirator is required, depending on whether a task is performed for 4 hours or 8 hours, indoors or outdoors. An example on the screen of an engineering control listed on Table 1 would be when using a handheld impact hammer drill, use the drill with a equipped shroud and dust collection system. Under this example, a respirator is not needed to perform this task, whether performing the task for 4 or 8 hours. Not all activities involving materials containing silica are listed on the table. Refer to the material's SDS sheets to determine if the material contains silica. If an activity involves silica exposure and is not listed on Table 1, refer to the exposure control plan, your on-site competent person, or the safety director for this information. Additional ventilation in a work area can help reduce exposure to dust in the work environment, but it cannot serve as the sole engineering control. In certain cases, when dust cannot be eliminated, personal protective equipment, also known as PPE, such as a respirator, can be used. Before using a respirator, you must have a medical evaluation form completed and reviewed by a licensed physician to ensure that you are capable of using a respirator. A fit test is also required before use of a respirator. Your employer has a respiratory protection program that is available upon request. Please contact Human Resources for scheduling testing. Many tool manufacturers, such as Hilti and DeWalt, have developed tools designed to be compliant with the new standard. To be in compliance, the tool and vacuum should be made by the same manufacturer to ensure proper flow of air. The warehouse is aware of the new standards and will be supplying tools upon request. Also, improvised attachments are not acceptable and should not be considered. OSHA has made it very clear that traditional dry sweeping and cleaning with compressed air is prohibited. Housekeeping going forward must be performed by using a HEPA vacuum, using a wet sweeping method, or using an approved sweeping compound, if available, to reduce dust exposure. When performing a task that creates silica dust, you must place signage, as shown here, to warn others of the hazard. Signage will be available from the warehouse. There are several activities that Bauma employees may encounter on the job sites that contain silica. Until additional data becomes available, Table 1 silica control plans and SDS sheets will be used in determining when engineering controls or protection is needed. Examples of the tasks which you may be asked to perform include, but are not limited to, hand grinding of concrete floors, walk behind grinding of concrete floors with our buffers, hammer drilling into concrete floors and decks, the chipping and jackhammering of concrete floors, the mixing and sanding of drywall setting muds such as Easy Sand 90 and 45 and other brands, the cutting of cement backer boards, the mixing of our EVIS base coat, BTS, the mixing and scraping of cementitious fireproofing monocoat, the cutting of fiber cement siding, and general housekeeping and cleanup. With the exception of mixing activities and the drywall finishing listed above, Table 1 prescribes an engineering method suitable to control dust below the exposure limit. Anytime engineering controls can be used as outlined in Table 1, they should be followed. When Table 1 does not provide an acceptable engineering control and the material contains silica, you must wear a respirator after completing a medical evaluation form and being properly trained and fit tested until further testing can be completed to render the activity below the PEL limits. Thank you for your attention today. If there are any questions, please have your job site leader relay these on to the safety director. Also, please put your printed name and signature on the sign-in sheet so we can keep records of this training. Thank you.